Welcome along to Tweet Street Scotland Occupied. I'm Cinnamon Bridges, aka Peter. This is the launch of our parents forum, Not With My Child. Now, the ladies and parents who are helping to launch it, initially we have Eileen Spence, and we also have Jan, who's joining us this evening. Now, we're going to lay out what our intentions are as a parents forum. We're looking to get as much involvement from parents as possible. Scottish Government are going against the recommendations of a lot of professional bodies with their intention on enforcing GRA upon us against 80% of the electorate's wishes. So it looks as though we have a voice that's not getting heard. So we're trying to amplify that voice. So we invite any parents that are concerned about it to share their concerns. So first of all, I'm going to go to Eileen. Eileen, over to you.
Evening. Well, it's been a bit of a kind of momentous week with everything that's been happening with the pupil census, right? Parents got to see some parts of it. They got to see the letters where they said it was completely anonymous. They got to see that they had a certain time when they could withdraw their child from it. And then we got the 4 big questions. You got them there?
I'll display that in a wee second, Eileen, if you just want to carry on with your chat.
Right, so we've got the 4 questions. And once parents saw it on Twitter and, saw it elsewhere, because I know that newspapers took it up, various other media outlets, then they kind of went into volcanic mode, and quite rightly. Right now, Scottish Government's answer was, or the people who were defending its answer was, that these questions were only for 14-year-olds. And it was like, how many times have you had anal, vaginal or oral? Right, now, first, my objections and a lot of other people's objections to that is, not every child that's aged 14 has that emotional maturity. Right, that's number one. And it could be inciting curiosity with these questions, where before there was none. And they might go and look up what that means on a computer and then think to themselves, I'm not doing that. Is there something wrong with me? Right. And nobody seems to have factored that kind of thing into it, this questionnaire, right? There's also, they've said it's anonymous. There's not a thing anonymous about it, right? They won't tell you who they're sharing the information with. They won't tell you who the stakeholders are. They won't tell you who the academics are, right? But with these questions in them, what if a child had indicated that they were getting abused in a way, surely it would be the absolute duty and responsibility of professionals there to try and help that child. That is something that they should be doing. So it's not anonymous. Strangers are going to know this about your children. It's actual fact a longitudinal study, probably set up for between 25 and 30 years. Once we, I kind of started looking at it along with some other people, there's pretty heavy folk involved in this. It's a European study. It's been paid for by the World Health Organization. The data is getting kept offshore, a firm called CMIS. And there's a lot of money involved in this. Glasgow University is involved. Strathclyde University is involved, and it's Public Health at Glasgow University and its Celsus unit, we believe, Research Centre for Excellence for Children's Care, could have been involved in this because they have been involved in similar projects. But what this is looking at, probably SHINE as well, that's School Health Improvement and Wellbeing Research Network, and Child and Adolescent Health Research Unit. These are all units kind of based in Scotland. Now, they're not saying a word about this, right, because they want the data. And this data will be actually tracing your child from age 8 right up to age 18. when they leave school, if they leave school at that age. And it's not only asking them about themselves, but it's asking about their attitudes towards their parents. Their sleep patterns, that's okay, they can ask them about a sleep pattern, but asking them about, you know, their parents. And we looked at some of materials that were being kept by CMIS, you know, for another study. There weren't answers in it. It was like the questions, like a, what do you call that data sheet? Spreadsheet, right? So you would have each child's name, right? And the question asked at the top and what, you know, what their answer would be. And there's a bit there for parents, which is astonishing because no parent was told this. So I was wondering what you'd found out, Jan, if anything with this.
Well, I mean, first of all, if you go for an exam, you're given a candidate number. That's exactly how they find you. Now they're given over this information below the age of consent. A child hasn't got the capacity to consent to this. And they haven't asked for parental consent either. They're asking them if they've broken the law, essentially, on what they've taken, drinks, drugs, smoking-wise or sex-wise. It's all against the law for somebody of 14. Now, it's building a psychological profile.
Yes.
It's building the profile to use against you at a later date. It can be tagged in with your education records, your health records. It's too much power to give for nothing. A marketing company that's looking to sell something, to get that kind of information, is going to cost millions.
It's called data
And
mining.
here you are offering it up for free. Aye. And it's essentially, I see it. If the government wanted to do what they say they want to do, then the same as any pollster, an anonymous cross-section would do. It would give them the information that they need on an anonymous basis. So why do they have to go for every single child
Thing is, as
on a
well,
so-called census?
I was finding out today, a lady from Australia was telling me that she had a look at this particular survey because it's in a lot of the European countries as well. Right? None of the European countries have asked their children those questions, those 4 questions about anal, vaginal and oral intercourse. None of the other countries. So you've got to ask yourself, who in Scotland was it that asked for that to get put in? Who asked for that to get added?
What does it need answered for? Sexual orientation is all they need. Do you consider yourself straight or gay? Or trans, you know? That answers all they need to know. If a child's been abused, there are pathways to get help. You know, they don't have to get it like an interview situation.
I don't know that children are trans, to be honest with you, Jan. If a very small child is very acutely uncomfortable with their body, you'd be thinking more towards gender dysphoria. So it's not, you can't really see a trans child, if you know what I mean.
Well, that's the thing. The way I see it, it's a cognitive dissonance that's getting put upon us, essentially. And cognitive dissonance has been the most studied phenomenon in social psychology so far. It's used in political campaigns. It's used to single out groups. It's used to turn groups against other groups. It's psychological warfare, essentially. And if you ask a small child to do a picture, to draw you a wee picture, quite often it'll be the mummy, the daddy, and them or their siblings. You're attacking a core belief. They're attacking a core belief. The yin and yang, the darkness and light, the man and woman. It's binary. We are binary creatures. And you attack the basics, then children are going to have to answer. They're looking at a man and they're to say that's a woman, or they're a transphobe.
We should not lie to small children, and we should not be forcing small children to lie either.
No.
Right? Otherwise, when they grow up, if they have to go to court to be a witness, right, they'll think they can just lie their heads off because
Yeah.
teacher in school said it was okay.
But the government's telling you a man is a woman. What's next?
That's just
What's
just
next?
it's again, it seems to be that, and this is the way that I would describe it. They're trying to treat people with a mental illness by asking the sane to play along with their mentality to cure them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's never going to work in any society in the world anywhere.
Right, I don't think that they're calling it that now, Peter. My information was that there's this thing called DSM, right, and it's the DSM-5, and it's all the kind of psychological and psychiatric problems that they have in the world that are agreed are psychiatric problems and how you diagnose them, right? So on DSM-5, transgenderism on the 29th of May 2019 was removed from DSM-5, right, and put into sexual health. So on the 28th of May, 24 hours before, it's a mental health problem, right? And at the stroke of a pen, right, on the 29th, it's not, it's a sexual health problem, right? I bet you, I tell you there'd be thousands and thousands of parents throughout the world, right, that maybe their child's got autism, and if the World Health Organization sits down and at a stroke of a pen goes like, right, you're all better, what would be the reaction?
Aye, I mean, adolescents get confused. It's a terrible time. My own son's going through it at the moment. So they go towards somebody, they say, I'm confused, and they get signposted to a charity that tells them they're in fact the opposite sex. I mean,
it's wrong and it's dangerous.
Yes. I mean, are they examining whether the child's gay or just worried?
And what I kind of get away with the Scottish Parliament just now is that they are ignoring the advice of the Children's Commissioner for Scotland, who's saying, let's put a halt on this, and have a look at these questions. Right? They're ignoring the Catholic Church. Right? I'm quite sure that the other churches, right, are going to kind of come on board with that as well. Right? They're ignoring the local authorities. Yeah, there's some authorities who have said, no, we are not going to be doing this. Right? Now, why are these 126 people in the Scottish Parliament, why do they think they know better, right, than the thousands and thousands and thousands of parents out here that have said no?
Exactly. And if it was out open and above board, then why is it not general discussion? Why is it so covert?
Yes. I think that's what I find very objectionable about it, is the way it's been done by stealth.
Aye. And they haven't taken parents into consideration, and they haven't actually taken children into consideration either.
It's I think there's been more exclusion than inclusion from the Scottish government with the decisions that they've been making of late. Certainly there are new parties that have arrived on the scene for the political side of things, and one of those parties is running a women's forum that kicked off the same time as this parents forum this evening. The Alba Party are running a women's forum, so we are going to try, if possible, to work as closely with the Alba Party, with our parents forum, while they're running their women's forum, because let's be honest, the biggest portion of people who will have the concerns or will voice the concerns are women. And it's a case of we need to be allowing women to feel safe, but to get their voice heard. And by doing online forums and by having such things that you can do from the comfort of your home, because, and it shames me to say this, but women are scared to go and raise their voice, not to the point that they're not doing it, but to the point that I had a conversation with somebody earlier on today that they felt that they had to ask their husband to take them out somewhere because it was a political event, a semi-political event that they were going to, and they felt that they had to take their husband along in case of protests because they don't feel safe. And
Mhm.
2021 in
Years ago-
Scotland,
Peter, I
Aye.
used to be involved politically years ago, by the way. I used to go to like, Labour Party meetings and, you know, community council meetings and things like that. And now and again, they would end up in a dust cloud with arms and legs hanging out of them because people had disputes, you know. But
But this
see when
is
you're talking
different,
about,
yeah.
see when you're talking about safety, right? I'm reminded of all over Twitter this week that wee Scottish girl.
Yep.
And the gender neutral toilets.
Yeah.
13 years old, apparently an older pupil who's 18, a boy, had been, now according to the mother, right, has been actually tormenting her daughter for quite a while because her daughter's got short hair and is quite sporty, and words were said, and the 18-year-old allegedly punched her in the head. Right, so, well, she set about him. The 13-year-old did,
Good,
and
good for her.
ended up with a suspension.
and again, so what we teaching that young girl? What are
We're
we
teaching
teaching that young girl?
that she's not important, right? That a boy's feelings are more important.
When they've cut
Right.
the schools
Right.
to the quick,
That's older than, but 5 years bigger than her, right? That what he has to say is more important than this 13-year-old girl has to say. I mean, I saw her mother on Twitter, and the amount of abuse that was getting thrown at the mother was absolutely ridiculous.
mm,
And
I mean,
and that's up another reason, Eileen, why some people are reluctant to get involved or voice their concern because of the visceral abuse and some of the things that are said to women. And like, I don't want to
Peter,
sound as if
Peter,
I'm
but
a
what you say,
60s man.
but see if
It's
they were
like,
going to, see if they were going to say it to me, right? You know, like the phobe word, right?
Mm.
I'd be like that.
no.
Right, I'm telling you, right?
aye.
It's meaningless. It's been overused. It's lost its power. We don't care anymore. We know it's a tactic, and it's
Mhm.
not going to stop us getting to the bottom of this.
No,
What's been happening in this country, right? What's been happening to children? What's been
Across the
happening to
world.
women, right? And the money, the potential money that Scottish Government can make out of this by selling data. What's been found out so far is certainly not looking good for Scottish Government. And I'd advise everybody to have a wee look at the board, the Board of Public Health Scotland. Where do MPs go when they lose their job and lose their seat?
Yeah.
They
Public
go
bodies.
into organisations like that. My
Mhm.
former, or one of my former MPs, Anne McKeekin's a member of it, Public Health Scotland. She's looking after Public Health Scotland.
aye.
Right. Now, she's not got a medical qualification. She's a lawyer.
Yeah. But
Right.
don't you
And that's the way it's going. And there's the other guy that's on Public Health Scotland. Right. He's a doctor, right enough. But his particular interest is the Sandyford Clinic, where all the trans children go.
right?
Right. And I'm thinking, okay, then, Public Health Scotland, where's the guy that looks after the elderly folk? Right. Where's the woman or the guy that looks after, you know, the paediatrician?
Mhm. Yeah.
Where's maybe somebody that, now this is Public Health Scotland, right? Where's
Aye.
maybe the epidemiologist? Right?
Even the
Eh,
air cleaners in the schools.
Yep.
You know, it all contradicts. What,
Right.
the attainment gap's never been narrowed. The,
Right, well,
the-
so but they don't go away. The policies that they were bringing in that we didn't like,
uh-huh.
that we voted them out for, they then come back in through the back door and they get
Yeah.
jobs on
Aye.
places like Public Health Scotland or
The
on
boards.
a research centre or on
Mhm.
an Institute of Health and Wellbeing,
Aye.
right? And they get paid for it, and they get to put their what they were going to do in the first place anyway into practice through that.
Aye. And
that's
it's-
because nothing's open and transparent, right?
Aye.
You try and get a freedom of information request today from the Scottish Parliament and try and find out everybody that was at that meeting, and all the names will be redacted.
Aye, it's
So,
absolutely ridiculous, and
it's,
and what we want to do, and this is like when we're doing this parents forum, and when I'm doing other things that tie in with this, we know things. We have done so much research. However, we are bound, just like everybody else, by revealing a lot of the things that we know through the fact that the levers of power will be put into use against us. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to grow this the right way by having backing of MPs and by having backing of the most important people, and that's you. That's the people at home, the everyday person who this affects. Now, I'm quite happy to say I'm as common as Muck. I'm a grassroots person, and I'm doing this because there are so many like me that don't get represented, right? Eileen, and I don't want to speak for, and I will never speak for anybody. I'll always say I think they might say this or that, but Eileen, over to you to put your piece in.
Yes, I think this is really important because there's parents groups are sprouting up all together, are all over the place. And I would really like for us to be liaising with each other and exchanging information, right? So if somebody is having a public meeting, right, and they're needing leaflets printed out or something like that, it can be sent, over the internet, right, and they can get printed out, that kind of stuff. Right? It's very important that as parents and grandparents that we're able to share and exchange information, right? Know what each other's groups are doing, like a kind of umbrella thing, all doing their own thing, right? But coming together for certain things. And I certainly feel there's a definite need for it. Definitely a need for it just now, because we're not going to get any help from our MSPs on this. We're not. It's like the lady's not for turning.
no.
Oh, I know, and that's just, that just gave me the shivers, because it's the alter ego of the person this is why she got into politics, so that she could screw her just as badly. Right, anyway, but without attacking people, let's put out our message on how we can help. So as Eileen says, as I've said, so Jan, when you go.
Right. We're in a gaslight, essentially. I don't actually believe that it's really much to do with trans people at all. It's setting up a cognitive dissonance. And that means, where have I gone? It's setting up an inner conflict. They're telling you that a man is a woman and you are expected to believe this, or it's against the law. If people start believing what the government tells them, they're essentially turning into sheep. The cognitive dissonance, it's because you're told something is not what you see it to be. It causes a kind of anger in the brain. And people naturally want to get out of conflict. We don't want you to remain in conflict. So when you're in that kind of conflict, what do? Do you go to somebody you trust? Now, is that the person that has instigated the conflict in the first place, which is what they're hoping it will be? And as I say, they've attacked a core belief. Women, mothers. Take away the mothers, they take the children. It's as simple as that.
Well, if
the mothers, who's got the children?
If they take away the mothers, right, and they shut us up by applying hate crime, bill, right, or hate crime bill, it just means that our children are more vulnerable. But the mothers that be standing there going, no, you can't say that to my child. If you're not with my child, you're not doing that, right? They don't want this, right?
No.
Get to the children when they're young, indoctrinate them. Right? Because that is the word to use.
Oh yes, definitely. There's so many more now than even 5 years ago.
I have no explanation for it. I just know that what's happening in schools just now is wrong. These are other people's 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds kind of thing. It's a privilege looking after other people's children, right? And what you don't do is lie to them. You don't.
Or
Right?
encourage them to lie.
There's a difference between telling them, right, when they're in primary 1 and they're high as kites, that Santa Claus is going to be coming on Christmas Eve, right? Because there will come a gradual awareness that that isn't what happens. Now, there's a big difference between a parent doing that, right, and a teacher or a tutor or a trainer standing there in front of a 5-year-old and saying, you can be a boy if you want, or you can be a girl if you want.
Or
And
you're a transphobe.
Yes, or
you should be isolated.
Or you can be non-binary, right? And if a child says, but I don't want to do any of that, what happens? Is that punishment?
Yeah, it's,
Do they get a punishment?
it's punishment by exclusion then, and this the indoctrination then becomes complete because there are people excluded.
That's
from
the dissonance.
Yeah,
You're
and
told it's not what you see.
Yes.
so therefore it confuses the young child's
You're
mind.
told it's
The
not
young-
what science says it is.
Yeah, the young child then seeks acceptance by change, and it's indoctrination 101. Right, so we're going to be doing some Twitter spaces just to announce things that are up and coming. We're going to be trying to get as big involvement as we can for people, and through time, some of the information that we know, we will be able to tease out how to find some of this information is possibly the best way to avoid any legal wrangles that might be coming.
Probably just give people that the information that was available on the internet without hacking or doing anything illegal, and it's up to them whether they want to look it up or not.
Yes. So we will do that as we go through the getting the forum embedded and as we're learning, so that people have got reference points, so that, well, it's not just 3 people initially on this one. We've got other parents who couldn't make it this evening, but are going to be contributing as we go forward. But it's not just 3 people on a screen just trying to pull the wool out of your eyes. We will tease out that information as we go through, just when we get parents on board and as we start to grow. So that's,
see, when you
something
step
that we'll be
back from this, a wee bit, Peter, it's like, as I said, the data mining and a money-making exercise, you know, and everything else like that. This hasn't changed from last time rounds very much. Last time rounds, there were still pharmaceutical companies in meetings in the city, in Holyrood, right, with civil servants, and at the time they were wanting to sell the morning after pill and condoms for health development officers to give out in schools, right? That's because they had saturated the adult market and they were just looking for new markets. There's no morality in this for them, right? It's just all about money, right? But now they're back, right? And they've got something super duper, right? And they've got something where if you start telling the children young enough, right, that they can change sex, even though what they call it is gender, because you can't change sex. Sex is immutable, right? Yeah. It takes a sperm from a man, an egg from a woman, got to be fertilized, and then it grows into a baby. Right? That's it. There is no third gamete. Now, what you do is you're getting the children age 4, 5, 6, and you keep ramming it into them, right? That they can be, they can be a unicorn, they can be a boy, they can be a girl, they can be binary, they can be non-binary, right? You're softening them up for what comes next, because what comes next is the type of sex education that Scottish Government have put into our schools, which is absolutely vile and an utter disgrace. Pornography, anal, all the other things that they're saying. Nothing about the medical dangers of any practices. Right? Very little about contraception and how it works. It seems to be all about the bottoms. And it's enough. Right? And you don't have to have a PhD to take a seat back join these dots and think, this is a money-making exercise and our brains are their market.
Yep. And
Supposing they wanted to take a whole group, say anyone that's had anal sex is to be persecuted.
That would be
There they
dreadful.
aye,
But that could
Anybody
happen in the
that's,
future.
anybody that smoked a joint,
Right, but the
there
thing
they
is
are.
but that could happen in the future,
Yes,
right?
of course
Because
it could.
this is a longitudinal study,
Uh-huh.
right? This isn't something that just gets looked at every year. This is longitudinal. They keep in this information, right?
And it
And
is,
after you leave school, they'll be able to tie that up, because see, by the time you've left school, you get your national insurance number, right, when you're 16.
Mm.
All they need to do is access the national insurance number base to tie up your candidate number, right, to find out where you're living or if you're working.
really, as simple as that.
As simple
Yes.
as that, right?
and this
Or
and this is
or as simple as, because it's meant to be local councils that are going to be the first people looking at this, right? They can tie all the numbers up with a council tax reference.
Mm. And the council, well, I mean, public
Well-
bodies are always losing data.
But and
Always.
that's what we're seeing. And by the way, just in case anybody thinks that this is the most dangerous threat that we face, they're already working on the next one as well, right? But
Right.
that aside, we have experiences of safeguarding a lot of these things that are
Yes.
getting mentioned: women, children, data. We have been at the other side in some cases of how to best protect these things. So these
Yes.
things that are happening just now that we are saying you should be concerned about this.
Mm.
Those were the things that we knew back then that we were saying these are the things that we should be concerned. So they're working their way round about all the issues that we've already protected.
It's why some parents in Scotland took Scottish Government to the Supreme Court,
Mhm.
Named Person Act.
Yeah.
Right.
Same
This is
thing.
named person on steroids.
Aye.
Mhm.
And the thing is, people believe we're protected under the data protection from
No,
the
but not anyone.
European Council, and
No.
we're not. It's not
Aye.
advertised. It's not. It doesn't say so in any of the government websites.
Well, I
Brexit.
think we lost that in the
So
1st of
what, under
January
what protection?
2021.
Brexit did for that for us, and as much
Mhm.
as the Scottish government say, oh, well, our data is still safe as far as your doctors, etc., are concerned.
Is it
No.
in law though?
No.
As everybody knows, Holyrood has, it's a vassal parliament. We should have an independent Scottish Parliament so that it has powers, but to rely on Westminster for a lot of the things that when we're talking about the data and what have you, yeah,
Aye.
okay, Scotland can protect it for a wee while until Westminster writes a bill that overwrites what's in the Scottish Parliament. And it's as simple as that. The UK Internal Markets Bill is setting about all of these protections that, again, that we had, and we're getting conned out of those as well. So, as Eileen's mentioned and as Jan's alluded to, there's a con going on. It's a long con. It's been going on for years, and it's about keeping us as sheep and to work to their advantage. It's not happening
it's-
anymore, I don't think, though.
It's a new yoke over the working man. It used to be the yoke was the land ownership, but now it's going to be the ownership of the data. Data's
Yes.
what's going to control everything ultimately. And
Stephen
our
Cambridge.
children are getting harvested now for the
Yes.
future.
Yep.
No way. The state really only needs a basic minimum. If you're going to be if we are going to be a democratic state, then the state keeps the bare minimum of
And
information on
also, did
anybody.
anybody see? I mean, this all affects us. You know, all these things that are going on. It's like boom,
Mhm.
boom, boom. Something else happens. So Keith Brown, Criminal Justice Minister, is that right?
Yep.
And he's got the docket for reassessing or reviewing not proven verdict.
Mm.
Right. any betting that it's maybe going to implement Lady Dorian's recommendations on no jury trials?
I hope
Well,
not. I
it's
sincerely hope not, because a trial like that comes down to which one of the two parties do you believe?
Yeah.
And perpetrators are dispassionate. The one that's the
And-
victim is the one that's hysterical.
yeah. So here we
So,
go.
But what I'm
Right.
saying, the reason why I'm saying that is, right, see, in my first look at anything to do with like GRE or gender or anything else like that, I'd looked up I was elsewhere and I'd looked up the Scottish Government website, right? And what it looked like was they were going to change some questions in the upcoming census. It was a sleekness, right? It's how all this done in stealth, you know, over
Yeah.
a 4-year period.
Yep.
Right, maybe 5-year period that this has been done.
Yep.
Right. So when you get an announcement that Keith Brown's going to be looking at, you know, the not proven verdict, I immediately think, what else are the sneaky swines up to?
I
Right.
mean, we've had a pandemic. Mental health is through the roof with kids. I mean, 2 years out of their life is a long time
Mhm.
to be under isolation, social distancing, not visiting relatives, not seeing friends, being stuck in front of a computer. It's a long time. And are they tackling that? No, are they here?
Oh, well, of course, they had to have COP26.
Aye.
And as we're hearing about this Omicron variant that's rattling its way through the population.
They brought it in with them.
Yeah, it was
Another
brought
scare
in. It's
tactic,
brought
aye.
in with COP26. It's been spread round about the concern about it. There was the first death in within the 4 countries, so Scotland, England, Ireland, and Wales. So there was the first death within those countries of it, and the concern that I don't know. Like, my understanding is that this Omicron variant it's a mutation from an AIDS victim that the Omicron variant is all about. It's been well hidden. I've noticed that they're not mentioning much of this on the press. So we're aware that if we look at Downing Street, that they've just been lying like consistently for the pandemic started, and they're all getting found out during there, right? So what's the chances that the Scottish government have maybe been lying a wee bit and all to kind of try and
Well, they're lockstep, aren't they?
yeah, exactly.
Lockstep.
Right. So it's
And
the
the
thought.
thing-
Well, again, I'm being facetious and just like it's the Four Nations approach, Jan. You know that's been touted so
Aye.
often. Well, if that's the case,
What,
you're in agreement with
what
the way that
gets
things are
me
going.
is there is occasions where she could have stepped right up, looked over the parapet and led the way. And she didn't.
Well, what
We've
gets
waited
me
on
is,
and we've waited on Westminster every single time.
what gets me is that in 2020, just as we closed down, you know, for lockdown,
Mhm.
and for a full year after it, right, Shirley Ann Somerville, her position as Cabinet Secretary for Social Security and Older People. 10,000 people died in her watch.
Mhm.
Right? And instead of doing her own job, what she was doing was conspiring with lobbyist colleagues about GRE and about education and giving them access to free legal advice from the Equality Unit and the Family Law Unit. And she put
Working
it
on
right.
that
We got it.
and not on anything else, not on independence
And she
or
had
even the
200
pandemic. Aye.
but she had 200 meetings with these people.
Mhm.
Right? There were 200 meetings between her and her predecessor, John Spinney. Right? You can't get a minute of them. No, you don't know who was there. Right? Who were the civil servants? Who were the lobbyists? Who were the academics? Who were the SPADs? Who were the advisors? We're not allowed to know, and yet this concerns our children. This concerns impact on girls at school, frightened to use a mixed gender toilet, as they call it. this affects women. Right? And did you see that? Did you see that 6'4" or something guy down in London wearing a suit, a beard, and a moustache, demanding to get into the women's changing rooms in all the 25 shops, and they'll let him in?
I missed it.
Was he not a reporter though? Eileen,
Uh-huh.
was he not a reporter testing to see how
Yeah, he
silly
was.
it was?
Yeah, he
Aye.
was a reporter, right?
Right?
But see, that's the point, right? He was doing
Aye.
this to show how silly it is.
Aye.
Mhm.
And folk are jumping on and going like that. Oh, but that's great. What?
No, we have to get common sense back. A decent
Yeah.
Glasgow common sense. You know, a spade is a spade, and that's it. Women
Yep.
should not have to be justifying same-sex spaces. That's women's spaces. That was fought for. That was won. You know, why do we now have to start making excuses?
And my terror is that, you know, the things that were fought and won, you know, by women, that my children and grandchildren are going to have less rights than I did growing up.
I'm horrified that the Human Rights Act is in Priti Patel's inbox, for God's sake. You know, how dare they? We didn't vote for Brexit, but we certainly didn't vote to tear up our human rights. You know,
And
we didn't
the
vote
fact,
to be colonially dominated. We didn't
No.
vote to get rid of Scotland into one nation. Who are they kidding?
and the fact that we've got a Scottish government that is just sitting accepting all of the things that again, Jan, that you're raising, that, well, wait a minute, if they
Colonial
were,
government.
Aye.
It's a colonial
Aye.
government. That's what we've got,
Yeah.
Peter.
yeah, we'll call
But
them the
they've-
Scottish administration because they're
Yeah,
not
they've
acting
brought in-
like a government. Neither they are.
They've brought
They're
in this contention, this culture war,
no,
to keep us from saying, "Oi, what about our independence?
aye. What
We're
about our
fighting over
rights?
children's toilets."
It's for me, the fact that it's been introduced and it's at the stage that it's at, where you had that woman for the Greens that get 36 votes, that's a minister.
Oh, Slater.
How can you call that democratic?
Exactly, right. So 36 votes. Just listen to that. 36 votes she got, right?
Mm,
And she's a minister, and she gets to enforce the Gender Recognition Act upon the rest of Scotland.
And she's a Canadian. She's a Canadian. She's from
Canadian.
Canada,
Mhm.
right? And she's
Aye.
congratulating New Zealand in
Yeah.
passing, you know, their gender recognition and self-ID and all that. And the people don't want it.
Nope.
mm,
So
Right. They don't want it.
aye.
Nicola's pal, Jacinda, she just has a big cheesy grin on her, like the Cheshire cat.
Mm,
And
Big
that's
cheesy,
just-
a big cheesy
and
grin and a
that's
big bank balance. If you
Big
listen to some of
bank-
the rules.
big
Huh?
bank balance, by the way. That was a shocker.
Yeah. So
Right.
for anybody who hasn't seen, there's a lot of people saying that the information that was going on Twitter certainly was fake and fraudulent. Is all anyway. That's what a lot of people are saying. So what we're going to do, we're going forward. We're going to try and announce, as I say, what our future plans are. Depending on the response that we get from parents, we'll start doing some spaces on Twitter and gauging the feeling and trying to arrange things from there. But
Mm.
it's obviously coming up to Christmas, so it's going to be in the new year before there's going to be a second one. So I just want to say, like, because it's a parents forum, so hopefully the target audience, there'll be parents listening to us. Have a nice Christmas with your kids. Enjoy Christmas with your kids. Enjoy the innocence that they have, and have a look at that and see if that's something that you want to keep. And if it is, then send us a wee message, get involved, speak to one of the ladies on screen either today as well. There will be more, so just look out for some adverts. Eileen, is there a message you want to pass out for Christmas?
Happy and holy Christmas to everybody. Right? And I'm really praying that next year is going to be a good one, that something gets done with this COVID, and folk can maybe try and get their family lives back together.
Jan?
Yeah, have a nice Christmas. I don't know what else to say. It's going to be some year ahead. With Brexit making things more difficult, but we'll just enjoy it well. We might look back and think this was the easy time.
No, Jan's not really into getting a joyful Christmas message and things like that, as you can hear.
Oh, I hate
Um,
Christmas. I've always hated it.
Right, well, for anybody who enjoys Christmas as much as certainly I do, enjoy it with your kids. For everybody at Tweet Street, for everybody at the Parents Forum, and Not With My Child. If this is something you're interested in, genuinely hit us up and we will try and include you and involve you, because at the end of the day, it's a Parents Forum. It's not about us three. It's about parents and it's about the wider society. So, aye, have a nice Christmas and we'll say goodbye for this evening.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.